get this over with. So we're ready to talk about some bad boss fights. Some fights that I consider to be the absolute worst of the worst. I've done a list of my least favorite bosses, so don't expect any of those guys to show up, because I face a bunch of new candidates that I consider to be terrible boss fights that shouldn't even exist. Least wanted. So let's get ourselves ready and tear into the worst of the worst, as I got 15 candidates of bosses that I genuinely dislike. Keep in mind, no final bosses. That's a list for another time. And I guarantee you that one will be fun to do. So, sit back and relax as I tear into the worst of these bosses, because this is going to be a fun ride.
That's it! That's the boss fight! This is the first time Crash and Spyro are clashing against each other, and we get to see this epic boss fight in full display, and it doesn't even last for 3 seconds! What? This is the fight? I know the other bosses in Crash Purple are pretty weak in comparison aside from Ripto, but come on, they put up more of a fight than this. This is just the first boss of the game and it's already over! What? Good job, Vicarious Visions. You did us proud. Not. When it comes to Sonic games, there's always gotta be at least a bad boss from the franchise. But when looking at the older games, there's always a bad boss awaits there. Yep, let's get introduced to Sonic 2 on Game Gear to the Antlion Mecha. This boss is questionable on the design choice, because what am I even looking at? The whole dealio with this fight is that the cannonballs are bouncing, trying to kill you, but you can't even damage the boss. The cannonballs are the only things that can damage it, despite the fact that avoiding them is a pain because of how bouncy they are, and they bounce randomly, and due to the freaking screen crunch, it makes it hard to figure it out. Considering there's no rings in the third act of the zone, you're gonna have a hard time getting through this huge difficulty spike of a boss fight, let alone even getting through it entirely. It wouldn't be so bad, but never mind the fact that this is legit the first boss of the game? Seriously, Sega? You wanna open up with this thing? Talk about a stroke of bad luck when Sega can give us a bad boss in an older Sonic game. They continue that trend with later games. Speaking of which, if there's one type of boss fight that I hate, enemy rush. Why bother coming up with a boss fight if you can just send a bunch of enemies and call it a day? Make it even more insulting when you add in a little boss that spawns in enemies and barely does anything. Something's up when your boss is literally called Dumb Drum. So it's a giant oil drum that tries to crush you. So it spawns in enemies. Then it repeats the process. Then it spawns in more enemies. And repeats the process again. And again. And again. And that's it. Look, I know it's Donkey Kong Country 1, but seriously? Considering that all the other bosses are just giant versions of normal enemies aside from the final fight, this is just lame. Like a giant oil drum that spawns in enemies, and it's not even the good type of enemies or the strong units. Like, seriously? This is the best they can do for a boss fight. An enemy gauntlet, or a boss that's pathetic, it goes down like nothing. K. Rool should really hire better goons to help him out with his job.
Super Mario Bros. 2 had an obsession with reusing the same boss, Birdo, a lot of times. And to be honest, I grew tired of fighting this character a lot. All she does is spit out eggs, which is really easy to avoid, but you have to throw them back at her to do damage. The first fight is easy and simple, but you fight her multiple times throughout the game, and then you got other versions of her. Ooh, are they creative? You got the red one that spits out fireballs. What's the difference? Nothing. Then you got the green one that only spits out fireballs and you have to throw objects at her. Still easy. Still uninspired. What's the difference? You fight this boss like a bunch of times throughout the game with no variety changes, no nothing, and it gets so repetitive and annoying. The other bosses had more character to them. Here, Birdo, just give it a rest. But then there's Mario Advance 1 where you fight Robo Birdo. Why is there a robot version of Birdo? What's the difference with this thing? Just charges at you, spits out giant eggs, which can easily be thrown back. That's it. This fight takes longer. It's more boring. It's more uninspired. So, what's the point of this thing? Or even the point of these fights? They could have just give us less Birdo fights to deal with throughout the game instead of making us fire like 10 million times, but then again, this is Nintendo with the cliche of bringing out the same old bosses to fight against 10 billion times kind of thing. Just gets old and repetitive. If you're gonna bring Birdo back, at least give her an actual boss fight that's creative somewhat.
When I made that best villains ranking list, one villain I was gonna add on the list was Megatron from the Transformers franchise. It was hard for me to think about what I'm gonna say for him, and considering there's a lot of different versions that range from best to worst, boss fights aren't the highlight for Megatron. He hasn't even had a stroke of luck with them, considering out of all the fights, only 2 I enjoyed. The final fights in Fall of Cybertron and Devastation. That's literally it. The other boss fights against him range from existing to downright boring. But if you ask me which fight against the big guy is the worst, my favorite version. Seriously, for a game that's focused around puzzles, why even bother adding Megatron as a boss fight? Because the Transformers animated game did Megatron dirty. So, what the gimmick with this pitiful, boring, and uninspired boss fight? Well, you have to send Bumblebee and Bulkhead to the top floor so Bumblebee can activate this generator, Bulkhead can control the magnet, make Megatron go out by using Optimus Prime to lure him out, then use the magnet to pull Megatron in and wail on him with Optimus's axe. That's all you do in this fight. This is the first fight against him, and that's all you do. Also, I find it odd that Bumblebee and Bulkhead take damage. For some reason, when Megatron gets off of the magnet, after he got stuck on it, they lose health. Why do they lose health? This doesn't make any sense. What's hurting them? And better yet, what's the point of this fight? Megatron can't even, fight you. He doesn't even bother using that big old blaster of his to blast you. No, he just runs at you in all brute force big guy, and he gets easily beaten by just a magnet and a battle axe. Talk about a lame way to introduce an awesome version of Megatron, but yet give him the worst boss fight ever. Why'd they have to do my boy dirty? I'm not done with this fight just yet.
Speaking of massacring my favorite boss, who's ready for me to talk about Deathstroke yet again? The fight against him in Arkham Origins is great. Easily the best boss in the entire series. It was fantastic and challenging. But then they brought him back in Arkham Origins and completely butchered him. His fight is just a lazy reskin of the Cloudburst tank fight earlier in the game. The only way to get access is you have to go through all these freaking side quests, taking control of towers and landmines, ooh what a pain, in order to even get access to fight him. And what's your reward? A lame easy boss fight that can be obliterated in seconds. You have more trouble dealing with the freaking Cobra tanks than with Deathstroke himself, since he goes down so quickly. Just barrage him with a bunch of missiles. You'll be dealing with the Cobra tanks quite a little bit longer since they're the enemies you have to stealth around. And what made the Cloudburst tank slightly better, in my opinion, is the fact that it had a uniqueness of traversing around. But with the Deathstroke tank, nah-uh. They took one of the best bosses in the series and completely butchered him entirely. Like, why? Why do they need to butcher him entirely? This doesn't make any sense. Oh, but once you destroy his tank, he hops out and... instant takedown. Rocksteady, next time if you make another Batman game, leave Deathstroke out of this, please! Because apparently you don't even know how to design him a boss fight properly.
Boss fights in Mass Effect games just kind of exist for the most part. There are some good ones, but most of the time there are some just pretty bad ones. And the worst of the bunch is Kai Lang from Mass Effect 3. Not only is this guy the most cringiest of the edgelords, he makes Infinite look so much better in comparison, but this guy has by far the worst villain fights I've ever seen. So what's his dealio? Well, both of his fights are total jokes. The first fight against him, he'll literally just do nothing. You can just shoot him a bunch of times and he'll just do a bunch of backflips to evade your bullets, but you can still land hits on him. And most of the time he'll just sit in the background, recharging up his shields, while the gunship in the background will literally shoot at you. But to make the first fight even more insulting, is that he's a complete joke since you can use your biotics powers to ragdoll him and softlock the fight. Why isn't he immune to these powers? That just makes the fight even more insulting. Saren is immune to them, so why not this guy? Oh, but then there's the second fight against him. And it also sucks because it's very easy and anticlimactic for a penultimate fight. All this guy does is just slam into the ground and cause more minions to spawn in, which by the way, pose more of a threat than this idiot ever wished he could. This guy is so boring, uninspired, and lame for a boss fight. His fight is just downright insulting, and he feels more like a reskinned phantom enemy than an actual boss. That's what he is. They took a phantom enemy, slapped this onto this character, and called it there. They didn't even make him a unique fight like Saren. So, what's the point of this cringe edgelord if he has no relevance to the plot, let alone to the main character, and just exists to get his butt whooped? Twice! Well, only once. But the point stands is that this character sucks, his boss fight sucks, and he shouldn't even be in Mass Effect 3 at all. Do your fights better, BioWare. When I did the Jak and Daxter boss ranking, there was one spot that was questionable on my end, and the boss that I put at a certain place. Number 9, he shouldn't even be there. Crew from Jak II is a bad fight. Never mind the fact that you're literally fighting against a fat guy, the whole fight is also an enemy gauntlet. What's the dealio with this boss fight? Well, you got electricity goons of copies of himself that will literally hurt you upon touch, but you can get rid of them with your weapons, and keeping distance isn't really that hard to deal with. So you'll be stocked and loaded with ammo and health since they drop it upon death, making all of these hazards pretty pointless if you can ask me. But then there's Crew himself. Fat dude won't even be able to do much since his attack is very easily avoidable, and you can juggle old Tubby over here just like it's nothing, like it's a circus ball at the afternoon. And then you repeat the process of the fight multiple times until you win. I guess the third boss of the game, but come on, considering the previous two bosses were better, this is just lame in comparison. Yet another boss fight that manages to be lame and shouldn't even be higher than the other two bosses I even put in the ranking.
Getting to some of the worst. Surely it can't be any worse. How about frickin' bird? Oh, gonna give me heartburn with this. So, let's just get this one over with. What is it with the Mega Man franchise and fire bosses? There's always gotta be at least one that has to come with an annoying stage, a horrendous boss fight, and negative story. They always gotta sink very low with the fire bosses in this franchise. But if they want to sink even lower, say hello to Phoenix Magnion, the worst of the bunch. The deal with this fight is that you have to try to damage this stupid bird, but he'll just teleport and follow it up with a counterattack of his own. He will keep doing this constantly, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to land some hits on this stupid thing. He's got fire arrows when he feels like shooting them, and 4 that erupts with fire, because why not? Then there's his clone attack where he'll summon a group of clones to try to smack you, which is also a pain because how are you supposed to figure out which one is the real one in a short amount of time before you take damage? They all look the same. But then, there are 2 of his worst attacks. His first attack is when he grabs a hold of you, he'll send in spirits of Vile, Agile, Bit, and Colonel to mess you up and take away a lot of your health. To where you control as much as you want, you can't even get out of this attack. Then there's his EX move, where he'll toss you across the air and scorch you up into the ceiling, helplessly. Why do they need to go this far with this frickin' guy? This frickin' boss? This is just ridiculous that they decided to make a boss so annoying and painfully intolerable to deal with. Begs the question of why do we even need this thing to begin with? No idea. Get lost with this stupid bird. Sonic rivals and boss fights are just the most forgettable part about any Sonic game, where you just wait to land a hit on the boss before your opponent does in order to win. It's the same premise with Rivals 2, except they try to get a little bit more creative with their boss fights. But then they decide to make the egg crawler for Rivals 2 and consider it good boss design. The whole deal with this fight is that you wait until the egg crawler comes out of its hiding spot so you can smack these enemy bombs to damage the boss. It would have sounded simple to do if not for the fact that the boss can't attack you, despite the fact that it can't even shoot projectiles at you. You built this machine and it doesn't even fight back. Then you got your rival smacking the bombs, making the fight even longer to go through, because yay, waiting game in a boss fight. Sounds like fun, when it isn't even fun considering the boss can't do anything against you. So you'll just be spending a long time just timing the bomb attacks in order to even get past this fight before your rival does, because if your rival wins, you gotta do the boss fight again. And since you gotta fight this boss 8 times in order to fully complete this game's story, don't you just love that multi-story playthroughs? Anyway, screw this fight. This fight's just stupid. Good job, Sega. I'll never understand the hate Lego Indiana Jones got when it came around. So, this game got weird with its boss fights, where every last boss in the game is just giant monsters. They do have creative and unique gimmicks where you figure out how to beat them, but then you got Donovan, which is just lame. So he becomes all this corrupted evil spirit in the form of a tornado. What do you do in this fight? You dig up a bunch of metal treasure chests and have him suck up all of the metal stuff so you can use rockets to shoot at him, which for some reason damages him in order to win. Yeah, that's it. That's all you do. Even by LEGO game standards, this is just baffling and boring. Because There's no unique gimmicks for this fight. With the other bosses, you had unique gimmicks to beat them, but here, there's nothing. He just sucks in the treasure chest and doesn't even try to come near you. He just sits there, doing literally nothing. This is a lame, easy, and uninspired boss fight, and I'm sure LEGO Games would have expanded on much better boss fights. It's very anticlimactic for someone in the form of a frickin' tornado. At least an actual tornado is more threatening than this dunce. Shameful, really, because I've seen more creativity with the other fights.
Gears of War Trilogy may have had its fair share of decent boss fights. Gears 1 only has a total of 3 bosses, and wouldn't you know it, the second boss manages to be the worst. Because at the near end of Act 3, you confront the Corpser. This thing's been haunting you throughout the entire game, so you would expect an epic fight. What do you do in this fight? You just shoot it in the belly, and then just shoot it in the mouth, avoiding its easy attacks, if it even can do an attack since it's easy to push him back. Repeat the process, then shoot a bunch of platforms, and... fight's over before it begins. A pathetic fight, if I do say so myself. Sure, you can keep it alive and enemies will spawn in, but you'll kill it before they even get a chance to help out. Seriously, why did they make this fight so pathetic? Like, this is the second boss at the halfway mark near end of the game, and yet they give us a difficulty drop. Like, dude, can't you just do something? I'll never understand anyways.
Doom 2016 and Eternal are the games that I consider to have the peak quality of boss fights, but then Doom Eternal has the Con Maker, the penultimate boss of the game, and my mind changes a little bit because I genuinely don't like this fight. Even though she was pretty alright for a villain, the boss fight just left a lot to desire. All you do in this fight is drain her 6 entire health bars, not even the final boss had that many, while avoiding the easy avoidable wind attacks and a giant laser. Then you use the super shotgun meat hook to grapple onto her and do a blood punch. Repeat this process 6 times to win. There's no checkpoints if you die. It makes the fight even more annoying when the arena is a fire hazard, making traversing around even more of a hassle. Usually it wouldn't be a problem, but since the arena will get covered into it near the end of the fight, it just makes traversing such a huge detriment and a pain to go through when you're dealing with an annoying boss. And there's no unique strategies for this fight aside from just draining her health, and she can just regenerate it if you leave her alone and worried about the ammo system. Overall, this is a boss fight I just didn't enjoy, and for a penultimate boss of the game, it didn't deliver for what to expect for the near end. Darksiders Genesis. That's a game that existed. The boss fights in this game are pretty solid and fairly made, that's for dang sure. But then there's Dagagon, and his fight is just infuriating to go through. Surely with someone who can command the power of lightning and water, he would have had an infuriating boss fight, but he managed to deliver it alright. The deal with this guy is that you just attack him like any normal boss, but then there's his attacks. He starts off very simple and easy, with his lightning attack can easily be avoided and enemies attacking you, while damage sponge Boneface over here just sits there doing nothing. Then he sends in a tidal wave to try to wash you away and send you falling, which can be avoided by just barrel rolling into it, even though I don't know how to get out of it. The fight gets more and more annoying when he tosses in more lightning stuff, and then you have those freaking lightning orbs that shoot a projectile that is so fast that dodging it is hard, and they can juggle you around, and there's no point in destroying the orbs because they infinitely respawning, making this fight look like it would be hectic and fun, but it just makes it more annoying and unfun when he's got his tentacles smacking you while these orbs are sending out projectiles that will literally mess you up if you try to attack the boss and stay still for a second, because this fight is not fun. Died multiple times due to those freaking orbs. It wouldn't be such a problem if they didn't even infinitely respawn, but they do. Just making this boss fight even more painfully annoying to go through, and then the fight becomes easier as you get to the end. This is just a waste of a boss fight if I do say so myself, where a huge difficulty spike had to occur. Oh, I saved the worst for last. Because gather around, my fellow friends, because it's time to introduce you the absolute insulting boss I've ever seen in a video game. So what's the deal with this guy? Well, Wily goes back in time to kidnap Mega Man from the future and reprogram him for combat. You know, that sounds like a good thing. But what's his latest greatest idea with this thing? A bootleg on a pogo stick.
You're a fucking idiot.
Yep, that's all we get. Quint is the definition of cheap, lazy imitation. Where do I even begin with this idiot? His design is absolutely putrid. Looks like some random fan-made OC on DeviantArt. His stage? He doesn't even have one. You go through a bunch of other stages in order to fight him. Boss fight? Pathetically easy. All he does is just hop around on his jackhammer, drilling into the ground, which is easily avoided by just walking to the sides. There's no challenge here. What is this boss fight? You don't even get a chance to finish him off. He just runs away like a coward. His weapon? Also garbage. It doesn't work for the final level since it really isn't built around this thing. And this is supposed to be the final boss's weakness? You could just use your buster. The music for the fight is ear-bleeding. It plays on a loop for 8 seconds and continuously loop endlessly, and due to this game's sound font, it makes it super repetitive to listen to. And this repetitiveness is on par with King Wart and Metal Robotnik. His entire fight is terrible. He also makes a reappearance in Mega Man 5 on Game Boy. And he's laughably the same way. You had a second chance to redeem yourself and you blew it! You blew it, you idiots! You fight the same way, you didn't even learn from the last time, you pathetic failure! Why add this guy into the game? Developer Biox didn't even need to screw this up, but they did. They managed to make him on par with the absolute worst final boss I face. The only thing the worst final boss I face is missing is awful music. And here, Quint just delivers everything he had to make himself the worst boss fight, not only in the entire Mega Man franchise, but in gaming as general, and it just mind boggles me how they managed to get this guy here. He's just the worst of the worst. It's just okay, you know what? That's enough. That's enough. I can't take any more terrible bosses. What do you guys think? You agree or disagree? I'm curious to hear what bosses you guys hate and you guys love. Well, that's gonna be in for me. Maybe next list will be more positive now. Who knows? I'll see you guys next time. Savage, bro. Savage.